where prayer flags flutter at the edge of heaven, and a kingdom chose happiness over wealth, forests over profit, and mystery over modernity. Welcome to the last Shangri-La, where dragons still guard the Thunder Dragon Empire, Bhutan, Himalayas, the only carbon-negative country, filled with mountaintop monasteries like Tiger's Nest. The first light over Bhutan doesn't simply illuminate, it transforms. As dawn breaks across the eastern Himalayas, golden rays pierce through cathedral-like valleys, setting ablaze thousands of prayer flags that cascade down mountainsides like frozen waterfalls of color. The air here tastes different, thinner, cleaner, charged with something ancient. Winter transforms Bhutan yet again. From November through February, the monsoon retreats, the skies clear to crystalline blue, and high-pressure systems bring cold, dry air from the Tibetan plateau. This is when the high Himalayas reveal themselves most clearly, when every peak stands sharp against infinite blue, when you can see 200 kilometers on perfect mornings. But it's also when temperatures plunge, valleys at 2,500 meters regularly drop below freezing at night, and higher elevations become locked in ice and snow. The high passes that connect valleys close entirely, and communities become isolated, relying on stores accumulated during warmer months. Spring, March through May, might be Bhutan's most visually spectacular season. As winter's grip loosens, something magical happens. The rhododendrons bloom. Bhutan contains over 46 species of rhododendron, from ground-hugging shrubs to towering trees, in colors ranging from white to pink, to blood red to purple so deep it's nearly black. Entire mountainsides explode in color, as if someone painted the landscape in broad, impressionistic strokes. The national flower, the blue poppy, Meconopsis gachidiana, emerges in high alpine meadows, its impossible sky-blue petals seeming almost artificial against green grass and grey stone. Prayer flags erected during winter festivals fade in the sun, and locals replace them, sending fresh prayers skyward on mountain winds. But Bhutan's geography isn't just about beauty. It's about isolation and protection. For centuries, the mountains served as fortress walls better than any human construction. Invaders from the north faced the Himalayan barrier. Those from the south confronted malaria-ridden lowlands and then narrow, easily defensible valleys. This natural protection allowed Bhutan to develop in relative isolation, to maintain cultural practices that disappeared elsewhere, to resist colonization when British India absorbed neighboring Sikkim and occupied Tibet. Even today, Bhutan shares no land borders with China officially, though the northern frontier remains disputed, a frozen geopolitical conflict played out at altitudes where few humans can survive. The country's topography also explains its remarkable biodiversity. Those rapid elevation changes create ecological islands, species separated by altitude rather than ocean. A bird species might thrive at 2,000 meters, but cannot cross the 4,000-meter pass to reach the next valley, so over millennia, it evolves in isolation. This is why Bhutan, despite its small size, harbors over 5,400 plant species, 700 bird species, and mammals ranging from tigers in subtropical forests to snow leopards in alpine zones, sometimes within 50 kilometers of each other. The rivers that drain this vertical landscape carry Bhutan's future. Every valley contains a river: the Pachu, Pochu, Mochu, Mangdechu, Kurichu, and dozens more. Glacial-fed torrents that begin as ice melt at 5,000 meters and eventually flow into the Brahmaputra river system. These rivers, dropping thousands of meters over relatively short distances, contain immense hydroelectric potential. Bhutan has harnessed this with massive dams and hydropower stations, generating far more electricity than it needs and exporting the surplus to India. This clean energy is why Bhutan can claim carbon-negative status. Its forests absorb CO2 while its economy runs on hydropower, with excess clean electricity offsetting emissions elsewhere. Stand on any ridge in central Bhutan on a clear morning, and you witness geographical drama few places on Earth can match. Behind you, the high Himalayas, white, eternal, untouchable. Before you, valleys dropping away in green waves toward the Indian plains, invisible in distant haze. Around you, clouds forming in real time as warming air rises from valleys, condensing into cotton ball cumulus that will become afternoon thunderstorms. Above you, sky so blue it almost hurts, and the occasional lammergeier vulture, wingspan 3 meters, riding thermals, scanning cliffs for bones to drop and shatter. This is Bhutan's geography. Vertical, dramatic, isolated, diverse, and achingly beautiful. A landscape that shaped one of Earth's most unique cultures and continues to protect it from the homogenizing forces that have flattened so much of our modern world. Written in stone, geological wonders and ancient Earth. Bhutan's story begins 50 million years ago with a collision that's still happening. The Indian subcontinent, once an island continent drifting north across the ancient Tethys Ocean, crashed into the Eurasian landmass with world-altering force. Neither plate would yield, so instead the collision crumpled, folded, and thrust rock skyward in slow-motion violence that continues today. The Himalayas rise approximately 5 millimeters annually, and Bhutan sits at the heart of this ongoing geological drama, a landscape still being born, still being shaped by forces that dwarf human timescales. The rocks beneath your feet in Bhutan tell this story in layers. The oldest formations, visible in the high northern ranges, consist of Precambrian metamorphic rocks, gneisses and schists, over 1.8 billion years old, remnants of ancient seafloors transformed by unimaginable heat and pressure into the crystalline stone that now forms mountain cores. These rocks were once at the bottom of ancient oceans. Now they crown peaks where only ice and wind reach the younger Paleozoic and Mesozoic sedimentary rocks, sandwiched between metamorphic layers, preserve fossils of marine creatures, ammonites and crinoids, that swam in tropical seas where mountains now stand, proof that this entire region once lay beneath warm, shallow waters. The geology of Bhutan isn't just academic interest. It defines where people can live, where roads can go, and what dangers lurk. The country sits in an extremely active seismic zone. The main central thrust, a massive geological fault where the Indian plate pushes under the Eurasian plate, runs directly through central Bhutan. Earthquakes are frequent. Major ones are inevitable. In 2011, a magnitude 6.9 earthquake centered in nearby Sikkim killed dozens and damaged thousands of buildings in Bhutan. Ancient dzongs built centuries ago incorporate earthquake-resistant design. Massive inward-sloping walls, flexible wooden joints, stone and rammed earth construction that can shift and settle without catastrophic collapse. Modern Bhutanese builders study these traditional techniques, recognizing that ancestors who lived with seismic reality developed architectural wisdom worth preserving. Water has written the second chapter of Bhutan's geological story. Glaciers, rivers, and monsoon rains have spent millions of years attacking the uplifted rock, carving the deep U-shaped and V-shaped valleys that define the country's geography. Glacial activity during ice ages sculpted the higher elevations, leaving behind hanging valleys, glacial lakes, and polished rock faces. Today, hundreds of glacial lakes dot the high country, some precariously perched, held by natural moraines of rock and ice that could fail catastrophically. The threat of glacial lake outburst floods, GLOFs, haunts Bhutanese disaster planning. When a glacial lake breaks through its dam, millions of cubic meters of water can surge down narrow valleys with devastating force, destroying everything in their path. Historical records document several such disasters, and climate change makes them increasingly likely. The rivers continue the work. Glaciers began, grinding away at valley floors, transporting sediment from high peaks to lowland plains. Where rivers cut through hard rock, they've created dramatic gorges, vertical walled chasms where water churns white over boulders, impossible to navigate, bridged only at rare natural constriction points where traditional chain-link bridges once swayed precariously before modern engineering replaced them with steel and concrete. These gorges forced historical trade routes onto high ridgeline paths, making travel between valleys dangerous and difficult, reinforcing regional isolation that preserved distinct dialects and traditions. But Bhutan's most accessible and fascinating geological features are its caves, natural temples carved by water through limestone. In Bumthang, the spiritual heartland of central Bhutan, numerous caves hold sacred significance. The Khöje Lakang complex sits beside a cave where Guru Rinpoche meditated in the 8th century and supposedly left his body imprint in the rock itself. Khöje means body imprint. Pilgrims press their own bodies into the smoothed rock, seeking blessing through physical connection with sacred stone. At Pema Sambhava's meditation cave near Paro, spring water drips constantly from the ceiling. Water considered blessed, collected by visitors who believe it carries healing properties. The geological diversity creates Bhutan's mineral wealth, though the country has chosen not to exploit it commercially. Rich deposits of limestone, dolomite, marble, and slate exist throughout the country. Small-scale quarrying provides building material, but large-scale mining remains prohibited. Another example of Bhutan prioritizing environmental preservation over economic gain. The limestone caves particularly fascinate geologists and speleologists. Networks of passages carved through soluble rock create underground labyrinths, most unexplored, some rumored to connect distant valleys, all considered sacred spaces where spirits dwell. Hot springs bubble up throughout Bhutan, proof of ongoing geothermal activity linked to the active tectonics beneath. Gasa Hot Springs, in the remote northwest, attracts pilgrims and tourists who soak in mineral-rich waters that emerge at 50 degrees Celsius, said to cure everything from arthritis to skin conditions. The Duenmang Chachu near Zhemgang offers similar relief, with separate pools for men and women, where locals gather not just for healing, but for community, sharing news, arranging marriages, settling disputes while sitting in therapeutic waters that rise from deep in Earth's restless crust. Landslides represent Bhutan's most visible ongoing geological process. The combination of steep slopes, fractured rock, intense monsoon rainfall, and seismic activity makes slope failure common. Every monsoon season, landslides close roads, isolate villages, and occasionally claim lives. The dramatic 2009 landslide at Punakha buried farmland under millions of tons of debris in minutes. Bhutanese engineers constantly battle geology, building retaining walls, constructing drainage systems, rerouting roads away from unstable slopes. But in a landscape this steep and geologically active, it's a battle that can never be fully won. Rock formations throughout Bhutan hold spiritual significance that blurs the line between geology and mythology. At Chelula Pass, the highest road pass at 3,988 meters, wind-sculpted rocks and stunted trees covered in prayer flags create an otherworldly landscape where the natural and supernatural feel equally present. Locals point out rocks that resemble animals, deities, or ritual objects, each with associated legends. One formation near Trongsa supposedly represents the footprint of a giant who once walked these mountains. Another near Bumthang marks where a demoness was turned to stone. These stories aren't mere superstition, they're mnemonic devices, ways of encoding important information about place, history, and meaning into the very rocks themselves. The exposed geology also provides accidental art. Road cuts through mountainsides reveal stunning cross-sections, layers of different-colored stone folded and twisted by tectonic forces, metamorphic banding that looks almost painted, intrusions of light granite cutting through darker rock. Geologists can spend hours reading these natural exposures like textbooks, deciphering collision dynamics, pressure regimes, and thermal histories. For non-specialists, they're simply beautiful, abstract geological art created over deep time, displayed on gallery walls of mountain highways. Bhutan's youngest geological features are still forming. In the high mountains, glaciers continue their work, grinding rock into fine flour that turns glacial meltwater, a distinctive milky blue-green moraines. Piles of rock pushed and carried by moving ice mark the edges of current glaciers and the former extent of larger glaciers from cooler periods. But these glaciers are shrinking. Climate change accelerates retreat rates, exposing bare rock where ice existed for millennia, creating new glacial lakes while draining others, fundamentally altering the geological and hydrological character of the high Himalayas within single human lifetimes. The rocks of Bhutan have witnessed the full span of Earth's history, from ancient seafloors to modern mountains, from tropical past to glacial present. They continue to rise, erode, shift, and shape the lives of everyone who calls this vertical kingdom home. To understand Bhutan is to understand its geology, to recognize that every valley, peak, landslide, and hot spring connects to deeper processes, to the ongoing collision of continents, to forces that built the roof of the world and aren't finished yet. Point. Living treasure, flora, fauna, and biodiversity hotspot. Bhutan functions as one of Earth's most critical biodiversity hotspots, a biological ark where species threatened or extinct elsewhere still thrive in forests that have never known chainsaw or bulldozer. The constitutional mandate that 60% of the country remain forested isn't mere environmentalism. It's recognition that these forests represent irreplaceable living libraries, ecosystems that took millions of years to develop, and could disappear in decades if unprotected today. Approximately 72% of Bhutan remains under forest cover, and over 51% of the country enjoys protected status as national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, and biological corridors. The subtropical forests of southern Bhutan feel primordial, dense, humid, buzzing with insects and bird calls that create a constant audio backdrop. Here, sal trees tower 30 meters high, their straight trunks valued for timber, but protected under strict forest management laws. The understory contains a botanical pharmacy, medicinal plants that traditional Bhutanese healers have used for centuries: chirata, pipla, and tearpat grow wild alongside bamboo thickets that flower synchronously once every several decades in mysterious cycles that trigger mass rat breeding events, which in turn cause crop devastation that locals have learned to anticipate through traditional knowledge. But it's the temperate forests of central Bhutan, blue pine, fir, spruce, and hemlock, that define the country's essential character. These forests cloak mountainsides in dark green cloaks that shift with altitude and aspect. Blue pine dominates between 2,000 and 3,500 meters, its long needles creating soft forest floors where little understory grows, making walking through these forests feel like traversing a natural cathedral. Vertical trunks rising like pillars, light filtering through in diagonal shafts, silence broken only by wind in the canopy and occasional bird calls. Higher up, silver fir takes over, then rhododendron forests where trees rather than shrubs dominate, their twisted trunks covered in moss and lichen, their spring blooms transforming entire mountainsides into botanical fireworks displays. The rhododendrons deserve special attention. Bhutan's 46 species range from ground-hugging alpine varieties flowering at 4,500 meters to tree species reaching 20 meters tall in temperate zones. Rhododendron arboreum, with its brilliant red blooms, is the national flower of Nepal, but grows prolifically in Bhutan as well. The endemic Bhutanese varieties flower in succession from March through June, creating a moving wave of color that climbs up mountainsides as spring advances. These flowers aren't just beautiful, they're ecologically critical, providing early-season nectar for pollinators emerging from winter dormancy, and their dense evergreen foliage prevents erosion on steep slopes. And then there's the blue poppy, Meconopsis gachidiana, Bhutan's national flower, discovered only in 1933 and formally described in 1961. This ethereal plant produces sky-blue flowers that seem impossibly delicate for the harsh alpine environments where it grows, between 3,500 and 4,500 meters. The blue poppy has become a symbol of Bhutan itself, rare, beautiful, thriving in challenging conditions, and found nowhere else on Earth in quite this form. Seeing one in the wild requires effort, hiking to high meadows during the brief summer flowering season. But that glimpse of impossible blue against green grass and grey stone becomes a defining Bhutan memory. The fauna of Bhutan reads like a greatest hits list of Asian megafauna, species that have vanished from much of their historical range, but persist here in forests large and connected enough to support viable populations. The Bengal tiger stalks through subtropical and temperate forests up to 4,000 meters, far higher than tigers elsewhere, adapting to cold that would shock wildlife biologists accustomed to tropical tiger habitat. Camera trap studies reveal healthy populations, though exact numbers remain uncertain in terrain, so rugged that comprehensive surveys prove impossible. These aren't the largest tigers, harsh conditions favor smaller body sizes, but they're perhaps the most remarkable apex predators, thriving where few humans venture. Higher still, in the alpine zone and beyond the tree line, snow leopards hunt. These ghost cats, perfectly camouflaged against rock and snow, prey on blue sheep, barrel, and Himalayan tar on slopes so steep that watching them through binoculars induces vertigo. Bhutan hosts one of the healthiest snow leopard populations in the Himalayas, protected not just by law, but by Buddhist reverence for all life. Herders who lose livestock to snow leopards receive compensation, reducing retaliatory killing. Conservation programs install predator-proof corrals and educate communities about coexistence. The snow leopard has become a conservation icon, a barometer of high Himalayan ecosystem health. But Bhutan's biodiversity extends far beyond charismatic megafauna. The red panda, unrelated to giant pandas, more closely related to raccoons, inhabits temperate forests between 2,200 and 4,800 meters, feeding almost exclusively on bamboo. These rust-colored, cat-sized animals with bushy tails are crepuscular, most active at dawn and dusk. Incredibly difficult to spot despite healthy populations, Bhutan's eastern Himalayas represent a global stronghold for red pandas, and the forests here provide connectivity between populations that have become isolated fragments elsewhere. The takin, Bhutan's national animal, might be the strangest mammal in these mountains. Looking like a genetic experiment combining goat, antelope, and musk ox, the takin inhabits alpine meadows and forests between 2,000 and 4,500 meters. According to Bhutanese legend, the 15th century Buddhist saint Drukpa Kunli created the takin by assembling it from the bones of a cow and goat after devouring both for lunch. A story that actually captures the takin's bizarre appearance remarkably well. These heavily built animals gather in herds during summer in high meadows, their thick coats protecting against cold that would kill most ungulates. Birdwatchers consider Bhutan paradise. Over 700 bird species, more than in all of North America, occupy these varied habitats. The black-necked crane, rare and sacred, winters in the Pobjika Valley. Migrating from Tibetan breeding grounds, Bhutanese celebrate their November arrival with the black-necked crane festival, and farmers leave portions of potato fields unharvested to provide crane food. The Sater Tragapan, Ward's trogon, beautiful nuthatch, rufous-necked hornbill, each name represents another feathered jewel inhabiting forests where protected status means actual protection. The insect and invertebrate diversity remains largely uncatalogued, but field biologists estimate thousands of species, many endemic, many undescribed by science. Butterflies in particular flourish, giant swallowtails, spectacular Apollos, countless species in every color imaginable. The forests buzz with them during warm months, sipping from rhododendron blooms, puddling on damp soil, creating living kaleidoscopes wherever sunlight penetrates the canopy. Bhutan's biological corridors deserve special mention. Rather than creating isolated protected islands, Bhutanese conservation strategy connects parks and sanctuaries through forested corridors, allowing species to migrate, populations to intermix, and genetic diversity to maintain itself. The Jigme Dorji National Park in the northwest, the Royal Manus National Park in the south, and Thrumshingla National Park in the central region connect through biological corridors, creating a continuous protected network spanning subtropical to alpine zones. Animals can move along altitudinal gradients, tracking seasonal resources, maintaining the ecological connectivity that sustains viable populations. This biodiversity doesn't exist in pristine wilderness untouched by humans. That's a Western conservation myth. Bhutanese farmers, herders, and forest users have coexisted with these species for centuries. Their Buddhist beliefs prohibiting killing, their traditional practices maintaining forest cover and meadow diversity. The forests are used for timber, firewood, medicinal plants, mushrooms, bamboo, but used sustainably, with rules governing what can be taken, when, and in what quantities. This human-nature integration, rather than separation, might be Bhutan's most valuable conservation lesson. Wildness and human community aren't opposites, but can coexist when culture, spirituality, and practice align around respect rather than exploitation. Landslides represent Bhutan's most visible ongoing geological process. The combination of steep slopes, fractured rock, intense monsoon rainfall, and seismic activity makes slope failure common. Every monsoon season, landslides close roads, isolate villages, and occasionally claim lives. The dramatic 2009 landslide at Punakha buried farmland under millions of tons of debris in minutes. Bhutanese engineers constantly battle geology, building retaining walls, constructing drainage systems, rerouting roads away from unstable slopes. But in a landscape this steep and geologically active, it's a battle that can never be fully won. Climate change threatens this biological treasury. Species adapted to specific altitudinal zones face shrinking habitat as temperatures rise. Alpine species have nowhere to go. They already live at the roof of the world. Timing mismatches develop as plants respond to temperature cues, but pollinators respond to day length, breaking synchronizations that evolved over millennia. Invasive species move upslope into warming habitats where native species lack competitive defenses. Bhutanese scientists and conservationists monitor these changes, but ultimately, Bhutan's biodiversity depends on global climate action far beyond this small kingdom's control. A cruel irony for a carbon-negative country that has done everything right, yet remains vulnerable to the consequences of what others have done wrong. Dzongs and dynasties, history, architecture, and ancient power. The history of Bhutan before the 17th century dissolves into legend and fragmentary records, a misty realm where historical figures blend with mythology and reliable documentation remains scarce. Tibetan Buddhist traditions speak of Guru Rinpoche, Padmasambhava, the lotus-born, who brought Buddhism to Bhutan in the 8th century, flying on the back of a tigress to the cliff where Paro Taktsang now stands, meditating in caves, subduing local demons and spirits, converting them to protectors of the Dharma. Whether literal history or spiritual metaphor, Guru Rinpoche's influence permeates Bhutanese culture so thoroughly that distinguishing between historical fact and sacred narrative becomes both impossible and perhaps irrelevant. What we know with certainty begins in 1616 with the arrival of Nawang Namgyal, a Buddhist Lama fleeing religious persecution in Tibet. This remarkable figure, later titled the Shabdrung, at whose feet one submits, unified Bhutan's disparate valleys into a coherent political and religious state, defeating multiple Tibetan and Mongol invasions, establishing a dual system of governance combining spiritual and temporal authority, and initiating the construction of massive dzongs that remain the architectural and administrative heart of Bhutan today. The dzongs represent Bhutan's most distinctive architectural achievement, massive fortress monasteries that serve simultaneously as religious centers, government offices, and defensive strongholds. The Shabdrung understood that holding valleys meant controlling their strategic entry points, and that architectural grandeur reinforced political legitimacy. Under his leadership and that of his successors, dzongs rose at crucial locations, confluence points where rivers met, narrow valley choke points, elevated positions with commanding views. Each dzong followed similar design principles while incorporating site-specific variations, creating architectural unity across regional diversity. The Punakha Dzong, completed in 1637-38, exemplifies the form. Positioned at the confluence of the Po Chu, Father River, and Mo Chu, Mother River, this six-story structure stretches over 180 meters, its massive whitewashed walls rising from the riverbank, like geological extensions of the landscape itself. The Dzong has survived earthquakes, fires, and floods, including a devastating 1994 glacial lake outburst flood that nearly destroyed it, yet remains Bhutan's second oldest and most significant dzong, winter home of the monastic body and coronation site of Bhutanese kings. Walking through its courtyards feels like time travel. 3-meter-thick walls, courtyards open to sky, temples decorated with murals depicting Buddhist cosmology, and everywhere the smell of butter lamps and incense that has soaked into wooden beams for centuries. The Taktsang, built in 1648, occupies perhaps the most strategic location in Bhutan, a ridge overlooking the only east-west route through central Bhutan. Any traveler between western and eastern regions must pass below Trongsa, and for centuries, the governor of Taktsang controlled movement, trade, and political power. Every king of Bhutan held the position of Trongsa Penlop, governor, before ascending the throne, a tradition that recognized Trongsa's geographic and political centrality. The dzong sprawls across multiple levels, following the ridge's contours, its temples and administrative buildings interconnected by stairs, passages, and courtyards that create a labyrinthine complexity as much defensive strategy as architectural necessity. These dzongs weren't built by architects in the modern sense. No blueprints existed, no engineers with Western training. Instead, master craftsmen following traditional principles and proportional systems passed down through apprenticeship constructed these massive structures using rammed earth, stone, and timber, all fitted without nails or structural steel. The inward-sloping walls, batter, provide earthquake resistance through geometry. As the ground shakes, the wall's angle and mass make them remarkably stable. The heavy timber framing allows flexing without fracturing. The construction methods proved so effective that modern Bhutanese architecture still employs these traditional techniques, often mandating them by law to preserve architectural continuity. But Bhutanese history wasn't just dzongs and shabdrungs, it was also conflict, intrigue, and near-constant power struggles. After the Shabdrung's death in 1651, maintained secret for 54 years to prevent succession chaos, Bhutan descended into civil war periods where regional governors, penlops, fought for supremacy. Dzongs besieged other dzongs, and assassination became political tool. The country fragmented into rival fiefdoms, reunifying periodically under strong leaders before fragmenting again. This cycle continued for over 2 centuries, with brief periods of unity punctuated by longer periods of regional autonomy approaching actual independence. British involvement in Bhutan's affairs began in the 18th century, as the British East India Company expanded influence in the Indian subcontinent. Border disputes, skirmishes, and the Duar War of 1864-65 resulted in Bhutan losing its southern Duar territories to British India, valuable subtropical lands that generated revenue through trade and agriculture. The Treaty of Sinchala formalized this loss while establishing British influence over Bhutanese external affairs, beginning the international isolation that would characterize Bhutan for the next century. The establishment of the hereditary monarchy in 1907 marked Bhutan's modern era. Ugyen Wangchuck, the powerful penlop of Trongsa, who had mediated between feuding regions and assisted British military campaigns in Tibet, was unanimously chosen as Bhutan's first hereditary king by an assembly of religious leaders, officials, and representatives. This move ended centuries of succession disputes and civil conflict, providing political stability that allowed gradual modernization while preserving cultural identity. The third king, Jigme Dorji Wangchuck, reigned 1952-1972, opened Bhutan to the outside world, abolishing slavery and serfdom, establishing the National Assembly, joining the United Nations, and initiating development programs. His son, the fourth king Jigme Singye Wangchuck, introduced the concept of gross national happiness in the 1970s, arguing that true development must consider spiritual and cultural well-being alongside economic growth. This philosophy evolved from Buddhist principles and traditional Bhutanese values, but resonated globally, offering an alternative development paradigm when the limitations of GDP-focused growth were becoming apparent. In 2008, the fourth king voluntarily abdicated in favor of his son, simultaneously transitioning Bhutan from absolute to constitutional monarchy, establishing parliamentary democracy with competitive elections. This peaceful transition, rare in global history, reflected the Wangchuck dynasty's progressive vision and demonstrated that Bhutan could evolve politically while maintaining cultural continuity. The fifth king, Jigme Khesar Namgyel Wangchuck, and his parliament now govern a constitutional monarchy where the king retains significant influence but shares power with elected officials. The archaeological record reveals that Bhutan's history extends far deeper than written records. Stone tools from the Paleolithic period indicate human presence thousands of years ago. Megalithic sites, standing stones and structures whose purpose remains debated, dot the landscape, their origins and creators lost to time. These mysterious monuments, often associated with local legends about giants or ancient peoples, suggest complex societies existed in Bhutan long before Buddhism arrived, but without written records or systematic archaeology, their stories remain largely untold. The monasteries preserve Bhutan's intellectual and artistic history. Libraries within dzongs contained centuries-old manuscripts, Buddhist scriptures, historical chronicles, medical texts, astronomical calculations, written on paper made from daphne bark, bound between wooden covers, sometimes wrapped in silk. These texts represent accumulated knowledge, but preservation challenges mount as paper deteriorates, termites attack, and fires periodically destroy entire libraries. Digitization projects now race to photograph and preserve these manuscripts before they're lost, capturing history that exists nowhere else. Bhutan's history remains very much alive, not museum pieces, but living tradition. The same dzongs built in the 17th century still house government offices and monastic communities. The festivals, tsechus, celebrated today, follow formats established centuries ago. The monarchy, though now constitutional, descends from the dynasty established in 1907. Walking through Bhutanese towns and villages means moving through layers of history. Modern internet cafes in buildings following 300-year-old design principles, monks checking smartphones between prayer sessions, government officials in traditional GHO, the male national dress, conducting business via video conference. History here isn't something that happened, it's something that continues, adapted but unbroken, connecting today's Bhutanese to ancestors who built dzongs, painted mandalas, and chose preservation over conquest. Soul of the mountains, culture, traditions, and living heritage. To understand Bhutanese culture requires understanding that it isn't performed for tourists, it's lived daily, woven into every aspect of existence from morning prayers to evening meals, from birth rituals to death ceremonies. Buddhism here isn't Sunday religion separate from secular life. It's the foundation of ethics, law, social organization, and personal identity. Approximately 75% of Bhutanese follow Vajrayana Buddhism, specifically the Drukpa Kagyu and Nyingma schools, while about 25% practice Hinduism, primarily among Lhotchampa communities of Nepali origin in southern districts. But these religious divisions matter less than shared values: compassion, non-violence, respect for all life, and recognition that material wealth means nothing without spiritual peace. The national dress policy makes Bhutan immediately visually distinctive. Bhutanese men wear the jiacho, a knee-length robe tied at the waist by a woven belt, kira, creating a large pouch that traditionally held everything from lunch to small purchases. Women wear the kira, an ankle-length rectangular piece of woven cloth wrapped around the body and held by silver brooches, koma at the shoulders, worn over a silk inner shirt, wonju, and accompanied by a short jacket, togo. These aren't costumes or formal wear. They're required in schools, government offices, and formal settings, and widely worn in daily life. The textiles themselves become art forms, intricate patterns woven by hand using backstrap looms, natural dyes creating colors that improve with age, regional variations in pattern and technique, identifying where the weaver learned their craft. Textile weaving represents one of Bhutan's most significant art forms, practiced almost exclusively by women who learn from mothers and grandmothers, spending months or years creating a single kira. The patterns aren't arbitrary, they carry meaning, marking social status, regional origin, and ceremonial purpose. Some patterns remain restricted, wearable only by royalty or monks of certain ranks. The weaving process itself becomes meditation, the repetitive motions of threading and beating creating textiles that embody patience, skill, and cultural continuity. Visitors to Bhutan marvel at elderly women sitting outside farmhouses, hands moving through motions perfected over decades, creating cloth that museums worldwide would treasure, worn here as everyday clothing. The Tsechu festivals, religious celebrations held annually in each district, timed to Buddhist lunar calendar, represent Bhutanese culture in its most vibrant, accessible form. These multi-day festivals center on charm dances, masked performances by monks depicting Buddhist teachings, historical events, and cosmic battles between good and evil. The dances aren't entertainment, they're teaching tools, religious practice, and communal celebration simultaneously. Demons wear terrifying masks and leap acrobatically, representing the chaotic energies that Buddhism must tame. Peaceful deities move slowly, precisely, their gestures heavy with symbolic meaning. The Black Hat dance at many tsechus reenacts how Lahalung Pelgi Dorje assassinated the Tibetan king Langdharma in the 9th century, preserving Buddhism from persecution, history taught through movement, costume, and music. Attending a tsechu means joining thousands in dzong courtyards, families picnicking on grass, children running between groups, elderly turning prayer wheels, vendors selling snacks and drinks, while in the center, dancers perform for hours under blazing sun or steady rain. Drummers and horn players creating soundscapes that feel ancient beyond reckoning. On the final morning of major circus, monks unfurl a thongdrel, an enormous embroidered or painted scroll depicting Guru Rinpoche or other sacred figures, from the dzong's highest level just before dawn. Seeing the thongdrel is believed to cleanse sins and bring blessings. Thousands gather in pre-dawn darkness, pressing forward as the massive textile is revealed, the image emerging from shadow into first light, a moment of collective reverence that transcends easy description. Archery, DHA, occupies a unique position as both national sport and social ritual. Traditional archery uses bamboo bows and arrows, modern competitions use compound bows, but both versions feature teams dressed in GHO shooting at small targets 145 meters distant, nearly twice Olympic distance. But the real action happens around the target, where the opposing team stands, singing, dancing, and taunting archers, trying to break concentration through mock insults and celebratory eruptions when arrows miss. When arrows hit, teammates perform victory dances while the scoring team drinks ara, fermented grain alcohol, and the banter intensifies. Archery tournaments can last days, with entire communities gathering, relationships strengthened through friendly rivalry that reinforces social bonds while keeping traditional skills alive. Bhutanese food reflects the landscape's altitude, isolation, and agricultural limitations. The national dish, ema dachi, combines chili peppers, ema, and cheese, dachi, into a spicy, creamy stew eaten with red rice, a hardy grain that thrives at high altitude. Bhutanese consume more chili per capita than perhaps any people on Earth, treating peppers as vegetable rather than condiment, eating raw green chilies with meals, adding dried red chili to nearly everything. The cuisine emphasizes dairy, butter, cheese, buttermilk, from yak and cow milk, preserved through fermentation in regions where refrigeration remains rare. Pork and yak meat appear in stews with radishes, turnips, and potatoes, crops that survive harsh winters. The diet is heavy, fatty, high-calorie, exactly what human bodies need to generate heat at altitude and fuel physical labor in thin air. Ara and suja, butter tea, serve as social lubricants. Ara varies from household to household, some sweet and mild, others powerful enough to strip paint. But offering ara to guests represents hospitality, and refusing creates awkwardness. Suja, made from tea, yak butter, and salt, churned into an emulsion that looks and tastes nothing like tea, provides essential calories and warmth. Visitors often struggle with suja's savory, oily character, but for Bhutanese in high-altitude regions, its nutritional necessity, consumed throughout the day, offered immediately to any visitor, the mark of welcome and community. The concept of Driglam Namja, the traditional code of etiquette and conduct, governs public behavior, clothing, speech, and interaction with elders and monks. This isn't oppressive traditionalism, but social lubrication, shared understanding of how to behave in various contexts that reduces conflict and reinforces identity. The code specifies how to wear the jicho and kira, how to address superiors, how to enter temples, how to offer and receive gifts, how to behave in dzongs. Countless small behaviors that, practiced collectively, create distinctly Bhutanese social atmosphere. Some young Bhutanese chafe at these requirements, seeing them as restrictions, while others recognize them as cultural preservation, the price of maintaining identity in a globalizing world. Traditional medicine, Soa Rigpa, remains widely practiced alongside modern medicine. The National Institute of Traditional Medicine produces herbal medications from plants harvested sustainably from forests, treating conditions from digestive problems to chronic illnesses. Traditional healers, drungchos, diagnose through pulse reading, tongue examination, and patient history, prescribing medicines compounded from herbs, minerals, and sometimes animal products, prepared according to centuries-old formulas. The government supports traditional medicine not as folklore, but as legitimate health care, integrating it into the national health system, recognizing that for many rural communities, the drungcho remains more accessible and culturally appropriate than biomedical doctors. Family structure in Bhutan traditionally followed matrilineal patterns in many regions, women owning land, inheritance passing from mother to daughter, husbands moving into wives' households. While modernization and urbanization erode these patterns, women in Bhutan maintain stronger economic and social positions than in many Asian societies. Arranged marriages have largely given way to love marriages, yet family involvement in relationship formation remains significant. Joint families, multiple generations sharing households, remain common in rural areas, though nuclear families increase in urban centers like Thimphu. The oral tradition remains vital in a country where literacy became widespread only in recent decades. Elderly storytellers recount epics, folk tales, and historical events on winter nights when families gather around wood-burning stoves, the stories teaching moral lessons, preserving history, and transmitting cultural values. These aren't children's entertainment, they're education, cultural transmission, and social bonding, the method through which societies without widespread literacy maintained knowledge across generations. Modernization threatens this tradition as television and smartphones provide easier entertainment, and some knowledge keepers die without apprentices, their stories dying with them. Yet Bhutanese culture proves remarkably resilient, adapting without surrendering. Young Bhutanese use smartphones to organize traditional archery tournaments, live-stream seishas to relatives abroad, and crowdsource traditional textile patterns. Hip-hop artists rap in Dzongkha about Buddhism and national pride. Fashion designers create modern clothing using traditional weaving techniques and patterns. This isn't cultural dilution but creative evolution, young people finding ways to be simultaneously modern and Bhutanese, global and local, connected and distinct. The question for Bhutan's future isn't whether culture will change, it always has, but whether the changes strengthen or weaken the values, practices, and identity that make Bhutan unique. Flavors of the Himalayas: food, agriculture, and culinary heritage. Bhutanese cuisine evolved in isolation, shaped by altitude, climate, limited agricultural options, and centuries of making the most from unforgiving landscapes. This isn't refined gastronomy designed to please international palates. It's survival food elevated to cultural identity, meals designed to fuel bodies working in thin air, to preserve food without refrigeration, to extract maximum nutrition from minimal resources, and to create social bonds through shared eating. The dominance of chili peppers in Bhutanese cooking cannot be overstated. While most cuisines use chili as flavoring, Bhutanese treat it as primary vegetable. Ema dachi, the national dish, combines fresh green chilies with local cheese made from yak or cow milk into a soup stew that ranges from comfortably spicy to face-meltingly hot, depending on chili variety and cook's inclination. Bhutanese eat ema dachi with red rice at nearly every meal, the combination providing carbohydrates, protein, fat, and enough capsaicin to generate body heat, crucial at high altitudes where cold is constant companion. Variations include kewa dachi, potatoes with cheese, shamu dachi, mushrooms with cheese, and countless others. The formula adaptable to whatever vegetables are available, united by cheese and, usually, chilies. Red rice, grown at altitudes up to 2,500 meters, provides Bhutan's carbohydrate staple. Unlike white rice, red rice retains its bran layer, giving it reddish color, nutty flavor, and higher nutritional value. It's stickier than white rice when cooked, with texture that complements soupy dishes like ema dachi. Buckwheat grows at even higher altitudes, ground into flour for pancakes, puta, and noodles, providing grain crop where rice cannot survive. In the highest regions, barley becomes primary grain, roasted and ground into tsampa, flour mixed with butter tea into dough-like consistency, eaten by herders who need portable, high-calorie food requiring no cooking. Meat features heavily but selectively. Buddhist prohibition against killing means many Bhutanese won't slaughter animals themselves, creating complex ethics around meat consumption. Some import meat from non-Buddhist regions. Others buy from the few Bhutanese willing to break precepts. Pork and beef appear most commonly, prepared as faksha pa, pork with red chilies, or shakam, dried beef, that's rehydrated in soups and stews. Yak meat at high altitudes provides lean protein, though yaks are valued more for dairy products than meat. Chicken appears less frequently, considered somehow more Buddhist problematic than other meats in ways outsiders struggle to comprehend. Dairy products deserve their own discussion. At high altitudes, yaks produce rich, fatty milk that Bhutanese transform into astonishing variety of products. Butter, both fresh and fermented, serves in cooking, preserves, and butter tea. Cheese ranges from soft cottage-style to aged hard varieties, the latter often dried and stored as emergency rations that remain edible for years. Chirpy, rock-hard dried cheese cubes, are chewed for hours like natural chewing gum, slowly releasing flavor and nutrition. Children grow up on these dairy products, their calcium content combating altitude-related bone density issues and providing calories essential for growth in high-altitude environments. The seasonal rhythm governs eating. Summer abundance, fresh vegetables, herbs, mushrooms foraged from forests, contrasts with winter scarcity when preserved foods dominate. Pickling and fermenting preserve vegetables through long winters. Pickled turnips, fermented radishes, dried chili strips rehydrated in soups. Traditional storage rooms built into houses maintain cool, dry conditions where grains, dried meat, and preserved vegetables last months. This seasonal cycle, once necessity, now faces disruption as roads improve and markets provide year-round access to imported produce, subtly shifting diet and culture simultaneously. Bhutanese agriculture faces modernization pressures. The government's commitment to organic farming nationwide, Bhutan aims to become world's first fully organic agricultural nation, reflects both environmental values and practical reality. Chemical fertilizers and pesticides were never widely adopted, so transition to certified organic production requires less change than elsewhere. Yet yields remain low, and feeding growing urban populations while maintaining organic certification challenges policymakers. Youth increasingly abandon farming for urban employment, raising questions about agricultural viability and food security. Wild foods supplement cultivated crops. Ferns, mushrooms, bamboo shoots, medicinal herbs gathered from forests. This foraging tradition represents deep knowledge of forest ecosystems, understanding which plants are edible, where they grow, when to harvest. As forests become protected areas and regulations restrict harvesting, some of this knowledge risks being lost, and access to traditional foods becomes complicated by conservation rules, creating tension between environmental protection and cultural practice. The future of Bhutanese cuisine balances preservation and evolution. Restaurants in Thimphu serve pizza and burgers alongside traditional dishes. Young Bhutanese study abroad and return with tastes for coffee, pasta, and sushi. Yet dachi remains the comfort food everyone craves, red rice the carbohydrate everyone prefers, and butter tea the drink that truly means your home. Food carries culture in molecular form. Every meal reinforces identity, connects present to past, and teaches children what it means to be Bhutanese. As long as people eat dachi, argue about whose ara is strongest, and gather around winter fires sharing stories over butter tea, Bhutanese culture persists in its most essential daily form. Where dragons still fly, myths, legends, and sacred mysteries. Bhutan's official name, Druk Yul, Land of the Thunder Dragon, emerges from mythology as real as history. The Thunder Dragon, Druk, appears on the national flag, orange and white against orange and yellow background, clutching jewels representing wealth and perfection. This isn't cute cultural branding. For Bhutanese, dragons remain real presences, protective spirits inhabiting storms, mountains, and waters. Thunder isn't meteorological phenomenon, it's dragons roaring. Lightning isn't electrical discharge, it's dragon fire. This isn't superstition or primitive belief. It's different ontology, different understanding of what constitutes reality, where natural and supernatural interpenetrate without clear boundary. The founding mythology centers on Guru Rinpoche, Padmasambhava, whose 8th century arrival in Bhutan transcends historical fact to become sacred narrative defining national identity. The story most Bhutanese know by heart tells how Guru Rinpoche flew from Tibet on the back of a tigress, his consort Yeshe Tsogyal transformed, to a cliff face 900 meters above Paro Valley. There, in a cave, he meditated for 3 years, 3 months, 3 weeks, 3 days, and 3 hours, subduing demons that opposed Buddhism's introduction. The demons weren't metaphorical. They were real beings, spirits of place who controlled weather, disease, and fortune, whom Guru Rinpoche had to defeat or convert into Dharma protectors. Paro Taktsang monastery, built around that meditation cave in 1692, marks this event. But the cave itself remains accessible, rock smoothed by countless pilgrims touching stone where enlightened master once sat. Every valley, mountain, and major geographical feature carries similar origin stories blending history and mythology. The Phobjika Valley's creation, for instance, involves a lama striking the ground with his staff, causing earth to split and drain, creating the flat valley floor perfect for black-necked cranes. Whether geological fact or divine intervention matters less than the story's function, explaining landscape, connecting place to spiritual power, and establishing crane protection as religious duty. When farmers leave potato fields partially unharvested for cranes, they're not practicing wildlife management. They're honoring sacred narrative embedded in the land itself. Yeti legends permeate Bhutanese folklore with peculiar specificity. The Migoi, wild man, appears in accounts from herders, travelers, and monks, describing creature standing 2 to 3 meters tall, covered in reddish-brown hair, walking upright, leaving footprints in snow at altitudes where humans rarely venture. Bhutanese don't treat Yeti as cryptozoological curiosity or tourist attraction. They're accepted fact, another mountain inhabitant, dangerous if provoked, but generally avoiding humans. Scientific expeditions seeking Yeti evidence produce ambiguous results. Footprints that could be bears, DNA samples from Yeti scalps, revealing goat and bear hair. Eyewitness accounts difficult to verify, yet consistent across centuries and regions. The Bhutanese shrug at Western skepticism. The mountains are vast, largely unexplored, and if snow leopards can hide so effectively, why not something else? The concept of Beul, hidden valleys of refuge, represents distinctive Himalayan Buddhist mythology. These sacred landscapes, prophesied by Guru Rinpoche and other masters, remain concealed by spiritual barriers, revealing themselves only during times of persecution or disaster to protect faithful practitioners. Several Bhutanese valleys are identified as Beul, including Khenbalung in eastern Bhutan, described in Terma, treasure texts, as Paradise Valley, where crops grow without planting, aging slows, and enlightenment comes easily. Expeditions seeking Khenbalung report disorientation, sudden fog, and overwhelming compulsion to turn back, the valley protecting itself from premature discovery. Whether literal geography or mystical dimension matters less than the belief's function, identifying certain landscapes as inherently sacred, protecting them from exploitation through spiritual rather than legal designation. Water spirits, Alu, demand respect and offerings throughout Bhutan. Every spring, river, and lake has resident Lu who can grant blessings or inflict disease depending on how humans behave. Polluting water, building near springs without proper rituals, or disrespecting aquatic environments offends Lu, causing skin diseases, leprosy, or misfortune. This belief system functions as indigenous environmental protection. People don't pollute rivers because legal consequences, but because spiritual consequences feel more immediate and frightening. Modern Bhutan incorporates Lu beliefs into environmental policy. Hydropower projects include Lu appeasement rituals, and water quality protection gains traction partly through appealing to traditional beliefs rather than solely scientific arguments. The treasure revealer, Turton, tradition, adds layers of mystery. Certain individuals, through past life connections to Guru Rinpoche, gain ability to discover Terma. Hidden teachings, sacred objects, and prophecies concealed by Guru Rinpoche 1,200 years ago, waiting for appropriate moment and discoverer. These treasures aren't always physical. Some are mind termas, teachings that spontaneously arise in Turton's consciousness. Famous Turtons discovered texts, ritual objects, and prophecies that shaped Bhutanese Buddhism, but the tradition continues. Modern Turtons still emerge, their revelations accepted or debated based on criteria ordinary observers struggle to understand. This living mystery tradition means Bhutanese religious canon remains open, not frozen in ancient scripture, but continuously revealing new layers appropriate for changing times. Sacred mountains throughout Bhutan remain unclimbed by law and religious prohibition. Gangkar Puensum, the world's highest unclimbed peak at 7,570 meters, received mountaineering applications for decades, all denied. In 2003, Bhutan banned mountaineering entirely on peaks above 6,000 meters, recognizing mountains as homes to protective deities whose disturbance would bring calamity. This isn't simply respecting indigenous beliefs, it's those beliefs having force of law, spirituality overruling commercial mountaineering tourism that generates significant revenue elsewhere in the Himalayas. Point. The unclimbed peaks stand as testament to values prioritizing sacred over economic, recognizing that some places should remain untouched, that mystery and inaccessibility carry worth beyond conquest and achievement. Haunted sites and ghost stories fill Bhutanese conversation with casualness that startles outsiders. Everyone has stories. Seeing apparitions on forest paths, hearing voices in empty rooms, feeling presences in certain locations. These aren't horror stories meant to frighten. They're matter-of-fact accounts of encounters with non-human consciousness sharing the landscape. Certain mountain passes are known for spirits that lead travelers astray. Specific ruins harbor ghosts of people who died violently. Old houses contain rooms where things happen. Bhutanese response isn't skepticism or fear, but pragmatic accommodation. Perform proper rituals, make offerings, show respect, and coexist. The haunted landscape becomes populated landscape, never truly empty, always inhabited by visible and invisible presences requiring acknowledgement. The prophecy tradition influences contemporary decisions with surprising frequency. When major national decisions arise, building dams, road routes, policy changes, officials may consult astrologers, lamas, and diviners alongside engineers and economists. Auspicious timing, prophetic warnings, and spiritual guidance shape decisions in ways secular modern governance typically excludes. This isn't primitive thinking overruling rational planning. It's integrated approach, recognizing that material and spiritual dimensions interact, that ignoring either creates incomplete understanding. Critics dismiss this as superstition. Defenders argue it represents holistic decision-making, incorporating more variables than purely materialist analysis. Rainbow body phenomenon, where accomplished practitioners dissolve their physical bodies into light at death, leaving only hair and nails, appears in Bhutanese religious history with multiple documented cases. Skeptics attribute these accounts to legend and exaggeration, but Bhutanese recount them as historical fact, sometimes with witnesses still living. Whether miracles occur or not, the belief in their possibility creates culture, where spiritual achievement matters more than material success, where meditation retreat for 3 years seems reasonable life choice, and where religious devotion represents practical path to transformation, not mere faith. The protective deities, Surangma, watching over Bhutan represent another dimension of mythological geography. Each region, dzong, and monastery has protective deities, often pre-Buddhist spirits converted by Guru Rinpoche into Buddhism's defenders. These aren't abstract concepts, but specific entities with personalities, preferences, and powers. Pelden Lahamo protects Bhutan overall. Mahakala guards monasteries. Countless local deities watch over specific places. Point. Annual rituals propitiate these protectors. Offerings ensure their continued protection, and violations of sacred space or ethical conduct risk their displeasure. This creates psychological landscape where humans never act alone. Protective witnesses observe everything, creating external accountability that reinforces ethical behavior more effectively than abstract moral principles. modern Bhutan navigates tension between preserving mythological worldview and engaging scientific modernity. Educated Bhutanese study engineering, medicine, and technology abroad, then return to society where sacred geography, protective deities, and prophecy remain culturally central. Rather than creating cognitive dissonance, many find complementary truths, quantum physics and Buddhist philosophy discussing similar concepts, ecology validating sacred grove protection, psychology recognizing meditation's benefits. The mystery isn't choosing between mythological and scientific worldviews, but integrating both, recognizing that different epistemologies illuminate different aspects of complex reality. The greatest mystery might be Bhutan itself, how a tiny kingdom maintained independence and identity while surrounded by civilizational giants, how it avoided colonization when neighbors fell, how it transitions to modernity while preserving tradition, how it remains culturally intact when globalization homogenizes elsewhere. Perhaps protective deities are real. Perhaps sacred geography truly shields. Perhaps accumulated merit from centuries of Buddhist practice creates tangible protective force. Or perhaps smart leadership, geographic isolation, and strategic timing explain everything without recourse to supernatural. Most Bhutanese would say both explanations are true, not contradictory but complementary. Different languages describing the same ineffable reality where dragons still fly in thunder, and mystery remains not problem to solve, but gift to appreciate point. Adventures at the roof of the world, extreme landscapes and human resilience. Living in Bhutan isn't romantic retreat. It's daily negotiation with geography that can kill without warning. The same dramatic landscapes that inspire photographers and poets demand constant vigilance, physical resilience, and cultural adaptation strategies evolved over centuries. This is a place where altitude sickness affects lowlanders within hours, where landslides close roads for days or weeks, where winter isolation can trap communities for months, and where the Himalayas remind humans they exist here on nature's terms, not their own. The trek to Tiger's Nest Monastery, Paro Taktsang, represents Bhutan adventure tourism's most accessible expression. 3 to 4 hours ascending 900 vertical meters through blue pine forest, crossing altitude where oxygen content makes every step harder than the last. The trail switches back repeatedly, gaining elevation relentlessly, passing meditation caves and prayer wheels, approaching the monastery clinging impossibly to vertical cliff. First-time trekkers often underestimate the challenge. Paro sits at 2,400 meters, the monastery at 3,120 meters, and those arriving from sea level face immediate altitude impact, yet elderly Bhutanese grandmothers make this pilgrimage annually, moving slowly but steadily, demonstrating adaptation to thin air that visitors cannot match despite youth and fitness. But Tiger's Nest represents gentle introduction to Bhutanese trekking. The hardcore routes, Snowman Trek, Layagasa Trek, Druk Path Trek, demand weeks traversing high passes above 5,000 meters, camping on glacial moraine, crossing landscapes where weather can shift from clear to whiteout in minutes. The Snowman Trek, one of world's most challenging commercial treks, requires 25 to 30 days, crosses 11 passes above 4,500 meters, reaches maximum elevation of 5,320 meters at Gofula Pass, and experiences completion rates below 40% due to altitude sickness, weather, or sheer physical exhaustion. Those who complete it walk through lunar landscapes of rock and ice, camp beside glacial lakes where no human settlement exists within dozens of kilometers, and experience solitude and exposure that few places on Earth still offer. The high-altitude herders, yak herders and sheep herders following seasonal transhumance patterns, live lives of extreme exposure that make trekking seem like vacation. They move livestock to high summer pastures above 4,000 meters when lowland snows melt, living in stone huts or yak hair tents, existing on dried meat, tsampa, and dairy products, exposed to storms, cold, and isolation. Their summer camps occupy meadows surrounded by peaks, beside glacial streams, in landscapes of stunning desolation. They return to lower elevations before winter closes passes, timing migration with precision learned through generations. Leave too early and waste valuable grazing. Leave too late and get trapped by snow. These herders possess knowledge that ensures survival where mistakes mean death. They read weather in cloud formations, animal behavior, and atmospheric signs. They know which plants indicate good grazing, which water sources are safe, which routes remain passable during storms. They navigate without GPS through terrain where landmarks disappear in fog and snow, relying on memory and traditional knowledge passed from parent to child. As modernization pulls young people toward easier urban lives, some of this knowledge disappears with elderly herders who die without apprentices, representing irreplaceable loss of human adaptation to extreme environments. Cordyceps sinensis harvesting represents extreme altitude economic activity mixing adventure and livelihood. This parasitic fungus infects caterpillars, eventually erupting from their heads as finger-like fruiting body, and commands astronomical prices in Chinese traditional medicine, sometimes exceeding gold's value per gram. Cordyceps grows above 3,500 meters, requiring harvesters to spend weeks at extreme altitude, camping rough, searching meadows on hands and knees for fungus barely visible among grass. The harvest season triggers mass migration to high regions, temporary settlements emerging where hundreds camp, search, and compete for valuable fungi point. Deaths occur from altitude sickness, exposure, falls, but poverty drives risk-taking, and successful season's harvest can support family for a year. Rock climbing and mountaineering in Bhutan remain largely undeveloped due to cultural and legal restrictions, but the granite walls and spires visible throughout the country tantalize climbers with potential vertical faces surround valleys, offering thousands of potential routes if climbing were permitted. The government maintains its mountaineering ban, though some climbing on smaller peaks and crags occurs unofficially. This represents conscious choice, prioritizing spiritual values and environmental protection over adventure, tourism revenue that commercialized mountaineering generates elsewhere. Whether this policy persists as economic pressures mount remains open question. Whitewater rafting and kayaking on Bhutan's glacial rivers offer adventure during warmer months. The Po-Chu, Mo-Chu, and Wang-Chu provide Class 3 to 4 rapids, turquoise water churning through boulder gardens and narrow canyons, with scenery, dzongs on hillsides, prayer flags, traditional villages, that exceeds any other rafting destination. The cold water, straight from glacial melt, creates risk of hypothermia from capsizing, and remoteness means rescue can take hours if things go wrong, yet the combination of whitewater challenge and cultural immersion creates unique adventure tourism that grows slowly, controlled to prevent the river trashing overcrowding that plagues popular rafting destinations elsewhere. Paragliding from Bhutanese ridges offers bird's-eye perspective on the vertical kingdom. Launching from slopes above Paro or Punakha, pilots ride thermals rising from sun-warmed valleys, gaining altitude to circle high above dzongs and villages, seeing the landscape as a lammergeier sees it. Patchwork of fields, forests climbing mountainsides, rivers silver threads, and everywhere mountains extending to horizons. The flying season lasts only months. Monsoon weather prohibits summer flights, winter cold makes flying uncomfortable. but during spring and autumn, conditions allow soaring flights, revealing Bhutan's geography in ways ground travel cannot match. Mountain biking represents growing adventure opportunity on roads built for vehicles, but lightly trafficked enough that cyclists can enjoy them. The East-West Highway, though unpaved in sections and featuring continuous climbs and descents, passes through spectacular scenery, subtropical forests, temperate valleys, high passes with Himalayan views. Cyclists face challenges: altitude, unpredictable weather, long distances between services, and occasional vehicles on narrow roads with significant drop-offs. But those challenges come with rewards. Descending from 3,000-meter passes at speeds that make prayer flags blur, stopping in villages where foreigner on bicycle remains novelty, earning meals and rest through physical effort in ways tourist buses cannot replicate. Winter transforms Bhutan into survival challenge, even for residents. High passes close, snow isolates communities, temperatures plunge far below freezing, and modern amenities reveal their fragility. Pipes freeze, power fails during storms, supplies run low if roads remain closed too long. Traditional houses, with thick walls and animals housed below providing heat, handle winter better than modern construction designed for comfort rather than resilience. Families gather around wood stoves, consuming stored foods, telling stories, performing religious practices. Winter becomes season of turning inward, physically and spiritually, waiting for spring's liberation. Climate change manifests in extreme ways in Bhutan. Glaciers retreat visibly, measurements showing shrinkage of hundreds of meters within decades, glacial lakes expanding dangerously, seasonal patterns shifting so traditional timing of planting and harvest no longer aligns with actual weather. Rainfall intensity increases during monsoons, while total precipitation may decrease, creating paradox of more intense flooding alongside water scarcity. High-altitude species find their habitat shrinking as warming pushes tree lines higher, compressing alpine zones between advancing forests and permanent ice. Yet Bhutanese resilience, cultural, physical, and spiritual, adapts to changing conditions as ancestors adapted to static extremes. Communities develop early warning systems for glacial floods, construct protective walls, and relocate settlements from high-risk zones. Traditional knowledge combines with modern meteorology to improve weather prediction. Agricultural practices shift to accommodate new patterns, and crop varieties adapt to changing conditions. The government invests in climate adaptation infrastructure while maintaining commitment to carbon-negative status, recognizing that global problem requires local preparation, even when Bhutan bears zero responsibility for causing it. The fundamental lesson from Bhutan's extreme environments isn't conquering nature through technology and force, the Western model that creates environmental destruction, but adapting to nature through observation, respect, and acceptance of limits. Bhutanese don't fight the mountains, they work with them. They don't conquer altitude, they acclimatize to it. They don't control weather, they predict and prepare for it. This adaptation strategy, evolved over millennia, offers alternative to domination paradigm, suggesting that human thriving in challenging environments comes not from control, but from humble relationship with forces larger than ourselves. As climate change makes Earth more challenging everywhere, perhaps Bhutan's ancient lessons in resilience become more relevant than ever. The archipelago's willows are the closest thing to trees you'll find, but calling them trees is generous. Arctic willow, Salix arctica, rarely grows more than 10 centimeters tall, its trunk thicker than it is tall, spreading horizontally rather than reaching skyward. Some specimens are centuries old, ancient bonsai shaped by wind, cold, and the constant weight of winter snow. Growth rings in their gnarled trunks, some barely visible even under magnification, tell stories of good years and harsh years, warm summers and killing frosts. Mosses and lichens are Svalbard's true pioneers, often the first life to colonize bare rock and glacial till. Lichens, those strange symbiotic organisms that are part fungus and part algae, can grow on bare stone, slowly dissolving minerals and creating the first primitive soil. They grow at rates measured in millimeters per century, making some of the larger lichen colonies on Svalbard's rocks potentially thousands of years old, living longer than any tree, any human civilization, any historical event in human memory. The brief Arctic summer triggers an explosion of growth so rapid it's almost visible. Plants that may have barely grown during a cold year will suddenly, given ideal conditions, flower prolifically, reproduce, and set seed in a biological sprint against the calendar. By late July, the tundra in sheltered valleys around Longyearbyen shows patches of green and gold. Arctic cotton grass, Eriophorum, with its distinctive white fluffy seed heads, covers wetlands in what looks like a field of white flowers, but is actually dried seed heads designed to be carried by wind. Svalbard's plant communities are categorized by scientists into distinct zones based on moisture, temperature, and substrate. Ridge tops, exposed and windswept, might be completely barren or support only the hardiest lichened slopes, with better drainage host sparse flowering plants. Valley bottoms, where water and nutrients concentrate, support the richest vegetation, relatively speaking, with continuous ground cover and surprising diversity. Near bird cliffs, where centuries of seabird droppings have fertilized the soil, the vegetation becomes lush by Arctic standards, displaying an intensity of green that seems tropical by comparison, though the plants themselves are identical species grown large on nutrient abundance. The absence of trees has profound ecological effects. There's no shade, no protection from wind, no leaf litter building thick organic soil, no forest structure creating vertical habitat diversity. The food web is simplified, truncated, making the ecosystem both elegant and fragile. Energy flows from sun to plants, to herbivores like reindeer and geese, to predators like foxes. A chain with few links, meaning disruptions at any level cascade quickly through the entire system. Climate change is altering Svalbard's botanical landscape in real time. Warmer temperatures and longer growing seasons are allowing some plants to grow larger, produce more flowers, and expand their ranges northward. But increased warmth also brings new challenges. More frequent freeze-thaw cycles can damage plant tissues. Summer drought can stress plants despite Svalbard's generally wet climate, and warmer winters with less reliable snow. Cover can leave plants exposed to killing winds and extreme cold. Some of the most fascinating botanical research happening in Svalbard focuses on seed viability and plant resilience. The archipelago's cold, dry conditions preserve organic material exceptionally well. Seeds from plants that grew here during the medieval warm period have been found buried in permafrost, some still viable after 800 years, a natural seed bank preserved by cold. This discovery partially inspired the creation of the Svalbard Global Seed Vault, the idea being that if nature could preserve seeds for centuries in permafrost, humans could do so deliberately. Research stations around Svalbard maintain experimental plots where scientists manipulate temperature, precipitation, and other variables to understand how Arctic plants will respond to coming changes. They've discovered that increased temperature alone isn't always beneficial. Some plants grow larger but flower less successfully. Others face increased competition from species moving north. The simple Arctic plant community, adapted to extreme conditions, may be less adaptable to rapid change than more diverse ecosystems elsewhere. There's something profoundly moving about Svalbard's flora. These tiny plants persisting against odds that would kill most life on Earth, blooming enthusiastically during their brief moment of warmth, and then hunkering down for 8 or 9 months of frozen darkness. They ask for nothing, provide foundation for the entire ecosystem, and continue their ancient cycles with or without human observation. They remind us that life doesn't require comfort to persist, only the smallest viable niche and the will to endure. Tell us in the comments, which of Svalbard's extreme adaptations amazes you most? The months of darkness, the glacial dominance, or the wildlife that thrives where few could survive? Point: Ghosts of the Arctic, Human History and Abandoned Settlements. Long before permanent settlements, Svalbard was a place of seasonal visitors. The first confirmed discovery by Europeans came in 1596, when Dutch explorer Willem Barents sighted the islands. Though there's speculation that Norse sailors or Pomor traders from northern Russia may have known of them earlier, Barents's discovery came during the search for the Northeast Passage, a hoped-for trade route over the top of Russia to Asia. He never found his passage, but he found something that would drive centuries of Arctic exploitation: whales. The Svalbard whaling era, beginning around 1611, was brutal and efficient. Dutch, English, Basque, and Danish whalers came each summer to hunt bowhead whales in the rich waters around the archipelago. The whales were slaughtered in numbers that seem incomprehensible today, possibly 50,000 or more over 2 centuries. They were killed for their blubber, which was rendered into oil that lit lamps across Europe, lubricated machinery, and was used in manufacturing everything from soap to textiles. The industry created temporary settlements. Smeerenburg, Blubber Town, on Amsterdam Island at the northwest tip of Spitsbergen, once hosted seasonal populations of several hundred whalers living in wooden buildings, operating massive blubber-rendering furnaces, and enduring conditions that killed many. When you visit the ruins today, you find the remains of furnaces, blubber ovens, and hundreds of graves, men who came north for profit and never returned home. The wood of their buildings, preserved by cold and dryness, still stands in places, silvered by age. Whale bones litter the beaches, jawbones arching like ancient gateways, vertebrae large enough to sit in by the early 1800s. The bowheads were nearly extinct, and the whaling era collapsed under the weight of its own success. The coal era came next and lasted longer. Geologists discovered extensive coal deposits in the early 1900s, and suddenly Svalbard became valuable again. But this time, for resources buried in stone rather than swimming in the sea. Norway, Russia, Sweden, and other nations staked claims, establishing mining settlements. The Svalbard Treaty of 1920 awarded sovereignty to Norway, but granted all signatory nations equal rights to exploit resources and establish settlements, a unique form of international governance that persists today. Longyearbyen, founded by American businessman John Monroe Longyear in 1906, became the Norwegian government's administrative center. The town grew around coal mining, with workers imported from mainland Norway to extract the ancient compressed forests from deep inside the mountains. Life was hard. Winter darkness, isolation, dangerous work. and until recent decades, strictly male populations with women and families initially prohibited. The mines were cold but not freezing. Permafrost keeps mine temperatures constant around -4 degrees Celsius year-round, requiring no heating or cooling, an unusual mining advantage. Accidents were common. Cave-ins, methane explosions, and exposure claimed lives regularly. The graveyard in Longyearbyen stopped accepting burials in the 1950s when they discovered bodies weren't decomposing. The permafrost preserved them indefinitely, presenting public health concerns. Now the dead are flown to mainland Norway for burial. But the most haunting settlements are the abandoned ones. Pyramiden, established by the Soviet Union in 1910 and operated until 1998, stands as a perfectly preserved Soviet-era time capsule. When coal prices collapsed and the mine became unprofitable, the decision was made to abandon the settlement. In October 1998, the last residents departed, leaving behind a fully intact town. Apartments with furniture, a cultural center with a grand piano, a swimming pool, the world's northernmost, a school with textbooks still on shelves, and propaganda murals celebrating socialist achievement. The permafrost has kept everything preserved. Walking through Pyramiden today, with authorized guides only, feels like exploring a ghost ship on land doors, creak open to reveal living rooms frozen in the 1990s, books in Russian waiting for readers who will never return, children's toys abandoned mid-play. Nature is slowly reclaiming it. Arctic foxes den in basements, barnacle geese nest in apartments, and the buildings sag as permafrost thaws unevenly beneath foundations. It's beautiful and melancholy, a monument to human ambition and the realities of economic sustainability. Ny-Ålesund, on the northwest coast, tells a different story. Established as a mining town in 1916, it suffered a catastrophic mining accident in 1962 that killed 21 men, leading to the closure of mining operations. Rather than abandoning it, Norway repurposed Ny-Ålesund as an international Arctic research station. Today, it's home to scientists from a dozen nations conducting climate, atmospheric, and biological research. It's also historically significant as the launching point for numerous polar expeditions, including those of Roald Amundsen and Umberto Nobile, who departed from here in their attempts to reach the North Pole by airship. The mooring mast they used still stands, rusting but proud, a monument to the age of Arctic aviation exploration. Barentsburg, one of only 2 remaining permanently inhabited settlements besides Longyearbyen, is a Russian mining town of approximately 400 residents. It continues coal mining operations, though at reduced scales, and increasingly relies on tourism. Visiting Barentsburg feels like crossing into another country without leaving Svalbard. Signs are in Russian. The architecture is distinctly Soviet, and there's a palpable sense of cultural preservation. The community maintains a Russian identity in the midst of the Arctic, hosting cultural events, maintaining a Russian Orthodox chapel, and operating as a piece of Russia marooned in Norwegian territory under the unique provisions of the Svalbard Treaty. Scattered across the archipelago are remains of even older human presence. Trapper cabins, where hunters spent winters alone or in small groups, hunting Arctic foxes for their fur. These trappers were a special breed, spending 8 months in near-total isolation, with only emergency radio contact, living off stored supplies, and what they could hunt. Many of these cabins still stand, protected as cultural heritage sites. Inside, if you're allowed to enter, you find Spartan efficiency: bunks, a stove, shelves for supplies, and sometimes journals or books left behind. Their pages describing the psychological challenge of polar night isolation and the deep connection to landscape that emerged from it. The history of Svalbard is written not just in books, but in the landscape itself. In the ruins of whaling stations where bones still litter the shore, in abandoned mines slowly collapsing back into mountains, in ghost towns where the only inhabitants are foxes and geese, these remnants tell of human ambition, resource exploitation, international tension, scientific pursuit, and the ultimate lesson that the Arctic gives, and the Arctic takes away. Those who succeeded here did so by respecting the environment's power. Those who failed often did so by underestimating it. The ghosts of Svalbard aren't supernatural. They're the echoes of real people who lived, worked, struggled, and sometimes died at the edge of the world, leaving behind the physical traces of their presence for us to find and contemplate. The seed of tomorrow, science at the top of the world. Deep inside a sandstone mountain on Spitsbergen, 130 meters above sea level and 120 meters into solid rock, sits what might be humanity's most important room, the Svalbard Global Seed Vault. The entrance, a brutalist concrete portal that glows with eerie blue-green LED lights at night, has become iconic, appearing in documentaries, news coverage, and discussions about humanity's future. This is the backup drive for global agriculture, a failsafe against catastrophe, holding nearly 1.2 million distinct seed samples, representing every crop variety humans have ever cultivated. The concept is elegantly simple. Preserve duplicate samples of every seed from every gene bank worldwide in a location so remote, so cold, and so geologically stable that the seeds will survive even if their home institutions fail due to war, natural disaster, equipment failure, or political collapse. The permafrost surrounding the vault maintains a natural temperature of -3 degrees Celsius, and even if all power and cooling systems failed permanently, the seeds would remain frozen for decades or centuries. The location, 130 meters above sea level, ensures that even catastrophic sea level rise from total polar ice melt wouldn't flood it. The vault has already proven its worth. In 2015, researchers from Syria's gene bank made the first ever withdrawal, requesting seeds that had been safely stored in Svalbard before their facility in Aleppo was damaged by civil war seeds from crops that had been cultivated in the Fertile Crescent for millennia, the very birthplace of agriculture, were returned to researchers who could continue their work in Morocco and Lebanon, eventually re-establishing some collections back in Syria once conditions improved. The vault had fulfilled its purpose within a decade of opening. But the Seed Vault is just the most famous example of science conducted in Svalbard. The archipelago has become a crucial natural laboratory for understanding climate change, Arctic ecosystems, atmospheric processes, and the effects of human activity on polar regions. Over 350 research projects are conducted here annually by scientists from more than 30 nations, making Svalbard one of the most intensively studied regions on Earth relative to its size and population. The University Centre in Svalbard, UNIS, established in 1993, offers university-level courses in Arctic biology, geology, geophysics, and technology. Students come from around the world to study glaciology on actual glaciers, Arctic ecology and functioning ecosystems, and permafrost dynamics, where permafrost dominates. Field courses involve real expeditions into wilderness areas, with students learning to navigate, carry rifles for polar bear protection, and conduct research in conditions that test both scientific skills and personal resilience. Many students describe their time at UNIS as transformative, conducting fieldwork where every decision matters and where nature doesn't accommodate your schedule or comfort. The Norwegian Polar Institute maintains multiple research stations conducting long-term monitoring of everything from permafrost temperatures to seabird populations to atmospheric chemistry. Their datasets, some extending back decades, provide invaluable baselines for understanding how rapidly the Arctic is changing. When scientists report that Arctic temperatures are rising twice as fast as the global average, or that sea ice extent is declining at unprecedented rates, much of that data comes from monitoring stations in places like Svalbard. Atmospheric research stations on Svalbard monitor air composition with extraordinary precision. The clean Arctic air, largely free from local pollution sources, provides a window into global atmospheric changes. Scientists measure carbon dioxide, methane, and other greenhouse gases, alongside black carbon particles from distant industrial activity and Arctic haze, pollution that travels from lower latitudes and accumulates in the Arctic atmosphere. These measurements feed into global climate models and help verify emissions reports from nations worldwide. There's something profound about the Arctic serving as Earth's detector for pollution, created thousands of kilometers away. The remoteness that once meant isolation now means the Arctic experiences the accumulated effects of human activity from every continent. Glaciologists treat Svalbard as an outdoor laboratory for understanding ice physics and glacier dynamics. They drill ice cores, install GPS stations that measure glacier flow rates with millimeter precision, use ground-penetrating radar to map bedrock beneath hundreds of meters of ice, and deploy time-lapse cameras that capture calving events and seasonal changes. Submarine researchers use remotely operated vehicles to explore the underwater faces of tidewater glaciers, discovering that warm Atlantic water penetrating fjords melts glaciers from below at rates far exceeding surface melting. These findings revolutionized understanding of glacier loss and improved predictions of sea level rise. The Aurora Borealis research conducted in Svalbard takes advantage of the archipelago's position beneath the auroral oval, a ring-shaped zone around the magnetic pole where auroral activity is most frequent and intense. Scientists here study the interaction between solar wind and Earth's magnetosphere, the electrical currents that flow through the ionosphere during auroral displays, and how space weather affects communication systems, satellites, and power grids. All sky cameras capture every auroral display, building databases that reveal patterns in space weather. During intense solar storms, when the northern lights dance with exceptional violence, scientists work through the night, gathering data on events that occur nowhere else on Earth. Biological research focuses on understanding how life functions at environmental extremes and how it's responding to rapid change. Long-term studies track individual polar bears with GPS collars, documenting their hunting success, movement patterns, and reproductive rates. Researchers have discovered that some bears are adapting behavior, spending more time on land, scavenging more frequently, while others continue traditional ice-dependent hunting despite shrinking habitat. Population studies of seabirds reveal that warming waters are shifting fish distributions, forcing birds to fly farther for food and leading to breeding failures when chicks starve. Arctic foxes are studied to understand how a generalist predator responds to unpredictable food sources, from lemming cycles to changing seabird populations to scavenging opportunities from human settlements. The permafrost research has gained urgency as ground temperatures rise. Scientists drill into permafrost, installing sensor arrays that measure temperature at multiple depths, tracking how the annual thaw zone, the active layer that freezes and thaws each year, is deepening. They've discovered that permafrost isn't just frozen ground, but a vast carbon reservoir containing organic material from plants and animals that died thousands of years ago and were frozen before they could fully decompose. As permafrost thaws, microorganisms awakening from frozen suspension begin decomposing this organic matter, releasing carbon dioxide and methane, greenhouse gases that accelerate warming in a feedback loop. The carbon stored in Arctic permafrost exceeds the carbon in Earth's entire atmosphere, making its fate critically important for global climate. The prohibition against dying or being born in Longyearbyen has become a peculiar claim to fame, though the reality is more nuanced. The hospital lacks facilities for childbirth, so pregnant women fly to mainland Norway in their final weeks. Similarly, the terminally ill and elderly are encouraged to relocate south for end-of-life care. The graveyard stopped accepting new burials decades ago due to permafrost preservation concerns. These policies aren't morbid, they're practical accommodations to infrastructure limitations. But they create an unusual demographic profile. Longyearbyen's population skews young and healthy, with almost no elderly residents and very young children as a small percentage. It's a working-age town, energetic and temporary. Housing in Longyearbyen reflects Arctic realities. Buildings are constructed on stilts driven deep into permafrost, or placed on adjustable screw-pile foundations that can be re-leveled as ground shifts. This prevents building heat from melting permafrost beneath foundations, which would cause catastrophic settling. Utilities run in above-ground insulated pipes called pipelines, painted in bright colors and elevated on supports, snaking throughout town like industrial artwork. These carry water, sewage, and heating pipes, keeping them accessible for maintenance and preventing permafrost thaw. The result is a town that looks temporary even after a century of occupation, as if it could be disassembled and removed, leaving the tundra unmarked. The power plant, burning coal from local mines, provides electricity and district heating to every building via those brightly colored pipelines. In winter, when temperatures plunge to -30 degrees Celsius and lower, heating isn't optional. It's survival. The plant runs continuously, its smokestacks visible from everywhere in town, a reminder of the energy required to sustain human life this far north. There's ongoing debate about transitioning to renewable energy, but the challenge is significant. Solar power is useless during polar night. Wind is inconsistent, and equipment struggles in extreme cold, and importing fuel is expensive. The coal is local, reliable, and ironic. A town full of climate scientists is heated by fossil fuels because alternatives aren't yet viable. Daily life requires preparation that would seem paranoid elsewhere, but is simply sensible here. Leaving town in any direction requires notifying someone of your route and expected return time. Carrying survival gear, emergency shelter, extra food, spare clothing is mandatory, not optional. The weather can change with terrifying speed. Clear skies transforming into whiteout blizzards in minutes, temperatures plunging, visibility dropping to meters. People have died mere kilometers from town, caught in sudden storms without adequate preparation. Search and rescue operations are community efforts, with volunteers turning out to search for missing persons, sometimes in conditions that risk rescuers' lives. The last Shangri-La isn't hidden anymore. Satellite imagery maps every valley, tourists photograph every dzong, and internet connectivity reaches most communities. But the essential Bhutan, the spirit that makes this place unique, remains as protected as its constitutional forests. Not through isolation, but through intention. Not through rejection of modernity, but through selective adaptation. Not through looking backward, but through carrying forward what matters while carefully choosing what to embrace from the new. As climate changes, as biodiversity declines globally, as cultural homogenization advances, as societies everywhere struggle to balance material progress with meaning and purpose, Bhutan stands as living experiment in conscious development. Not perfect, no human society is, but different, deliberate, and demonstrating daily that alternatives exist to the dominant development paradigm that has enriched some, while impoverishing the planetary systems on which all depend. The mountains will stand long after we're gone, their snow peaks catching first light and last, their slopes cloaked in forests that breathe for the world, their valleys nurturing communities that found ways to thrive at the roof of the world by working with nature rather than against it. The monasteries will continue their practices, monks maintaining traditions that connect present to past, and both to something beyond time. The thunder dragon will keep flying, in storms that shake the mountains, in flags that carry prayers, and in the hearts of people who choose to keep it flying. This is Bhutan, imperfect, challenged, evolving, but precious beyond measure, not for what it is alone, but for what it represents. In its forests walks hope, in its culture lives meaning, in its choices shines possibility, and in its continued existence, despite pressures that have transformed or destroyed so much else, persists the essential truth that humans can live differently, choose differently, and create societies that honor both heritage and future, both material needs and spiritual yearnings, both individual aspirations and collective well-being. May the thunder dragon keep flying, may the forests keep breathing, may the culture keep evolving without surrendering its soul, and may we all learn from this small kingdom on the roof of the world that some things matter more than money, that true wealth includes forests and culture and community and peace, and that the highest peaks aren't those we climb, but those we protect. Not because we cannot reach them, but because we recognize that some places should remain untouched, some mysteries should remain unsolved, and some dragons should keep flying forever in thunder that echoes across mountains where prayer and stone and cloud become one. Point. Where would your journey through the Thunder Dragon Kingdom take you? What part of this remarkable place calls to your spirit? And what lessons from Bhutan might you carry into your own life, your own choices, your own understanding of what makes a life and a world truly worth living? Thank you for experiencing Bhutan through this documentary. May all beings be happy.